Here are 10 ways to make drawing in Procreate easier. First one is use a grid. In this case, I have a canvas with a reference photo directly on the canvas, and now you can add a grid by going to the wrench, then to canvas, then turn on drawing guide and go to edit drawing guide. Now make sure that the grid at the top is the same as at the bottom. So here we have that center line, and here we have the line at the bottom of the canvas. Here at the bottom, you can change the thickness of your grid and the opacity in case you want a more opaque grid. And then you can tap done. And then you can use that grid to make a precise sketch of your subject. And looking at the negative spaces, the areas in these little squares, this just makes it easier to get the right proportions for your painting. Oh, and if you want to paint this frog as well, you can find the full step-by-step tutorial at my Patreon. I will leave a link in the description. Next, using Symmetry can save you a lot of time and trouble. To turn it on, you need to go to the wrench, then to canvas, turn on your drawing guide, then tap Edit Drawing Guide and set it to Symmetry. Then you can tap Done, and then whatever you draw on one side of the canvas will also show up on the other side, making it easier to create a balanced illustration. And yes, you can find this and all the other tutorials linked in the description as well. Next thing that can make your drawing life easier is using brush smoothing. You can either go to your brush that you want to use, tap it, and then go to stabilization, and you can play around with the amount of streamline and the amount of stabilization to make sure that you don't get any wobbles in your lines. Try not to turn it up too high, because if you do, then sometimes your lines will get smoothed out too much or they will look unnatural. I can also apply this to all of your brushes. You need to go to the wrench, then to Prefs, and then you can go to Pressure and Smoothing. Here you can turn up stabilization and motion filtering for all of your brushes. Another thing that can save you time and trouble is the clone tool. Let's say you really like this bush over here and you want to copy elements of that to another part of your painting. First, you need to find that specific bush in your layer menu, or perhaps you have everything on one layer, that's fine as well. You need to find the layer on which the element that you want to clone is, and make sure that alpha lock is not turned on the layer. Then you can go to the magic wand, tap clone, and then you'll see this little circle. You need to place it on the area that you want to clone, like over here. And then you can tap your brush, and you can use any brush you like. For instance, we can go to artistic and use the Terralea, whatever you like. And then you can paint in another area, and it will place the bush over there. Or perhaps you'd like a bush over here. Just don't overdo this, because otherwise it will start looking unnatural. In Procreate, you can really easily trace images to help you in your sketching and line art phase. It can also help you get familiar with shapes, and it can be helpful if you just want to focus on the painting stage. Now, to easily trace an image, what you need to do is, first of all, import your reference image. Then go to your layer menu, tap the N of your reference image, and lower the opacity to whatever percentage you like for instance 40%. And then make sure you have a layer on top, so don't work on the layer itself, make a layer on top. And then on that layer, you can start tracing your reference image until you have enough lines that can help you get through the painting stage. And now when you're ready to start painting, you can turn off your reference layer and make a new layer in between, just underneath your sketch layer, and start painting on there. And if you want to learn more about this process, you can find the full tutorial linked in the description. If you have trouble finding the right colors for your paintings or illustrations, what you can do is go to the wrench, then to canvas, then turn on reference. Then you'll get this little reference window. And when you go to image, you can import a photo or a color palette or an artwork you like, anything that you like the colors of. And then what you can do is Well, you can zoom in and you can tap and hold your finger on the screen to grab the colors from the image directly. And what I find is that usually the colors are a little bit muted. So what I do is go to the color menu and just make the colors a little bit more saturated for your artwork. If you need to fix proportions in your painting and you don't want to redraw or repaint everything, what you can do is go to the magic wand, then to Liquify, and you can set it to push or also to expand or pinch. But usually I like to use push with distortion and momentum set to none, and you can play around with the size of your brush depending on how big of an area you want to push. And then you can use that to adjust anything, like make the eyes bigger perhaps, without having to repaint everything. Now, if you overdo this, it can start to look a little bit unnatural. So it's best, of course, to fix proportions like this as early as possible in your drawing and painting stage. The great thing about drawing digital is that you can easily duplicate stuff. Let's say I'd like more trees. Then you can just go to the layer with trees, like that's this one in my case. Here we have those trees. And to duplicate them, you could go to the selection tool, that's the S shade ribbon. And then you can select any trees that you'd like to duplicate like this while you have it set to freehand. Then you can slide down with 3 fingers and use duplicate. And now we have a duplicate of these trees and we can easily move them around. We can make them smaller or bigger without having to redraw them. And then we can tab the arrow. If you feel like your line art lines are a little bit too wonky, what you can do is go to the magic wand, then to Liquify, and set it to edge. And just make sure that momentum is set to none. And of course, you can play around with the size. And then you can go to any of the lines that you'd like to fix. You make the size smaller. And you can go along the lines and it'll make them a little bit thinner, a little bit more refined. That's an easy way to adjust your lines. And if you feel like this is too strong, if they are too thin, then you can go to adjust and adjust the amount and get just the right amount that you would like. So that's an easy way to fix your line art without having to redo any of it. My final tip would be to make use of special brushes to make your drawing and painting life easier. Like special painterly brushes for an expressive style, watercolor brushes if you'd like to mimic real watercolors, or things like grass brushes or flower brushes to save you time and effort. And these were my 10 tips to make drawing in Procreate easier. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, and I'll see you next time for the next tutorial.